You are not lazy, you're disciplined. But every bit of that discipline is being spent running away from what actually matters. You check your phone before your feet hit the floor. You stay up watching something you don't even care about. You postpone the same decision for the third week in a row. Not because you don't want to change, but because your brain learns that the easy reward arrives before the real one does. And while that happens, the siege closes in, slowly, silently, without you noticing. In the next 20 minutes, you will understand exactly how this works, and how to build a siege of your own, one that does not confine you, but expands your clarity, your vision, and the way you move through the world, not as theory, as architecture. Subscribe to Edo's Scripts before we continue. This is episode 5 of The Siege, and today the siege becomes complete. Before we talk about strategy, we need to talk about what is actually happening to you, not as a moral judgment, as a mechanical observation. Your brain runs on dopamine. Dopamine is not pleasure. It is the anticipation of reward, the drive toward something, chemical that makes you reach for the phone before you have decided to reach for it. The systems you live inside, social media, notifications, streaming platforms, news cycles, were not built to inform you or entertain you. They were built to trigger that anticipation loop as frequently as possible. Every notification is a small spike. Every scroll is a search for the next one. Every unread message is a pending reward your brain cannot ignore. The result is that your brain spends most of its energy chasing small, fast rewards, and has very little left for the slow, heavy work of building something that actually matters. This is not a character flaw. It is not a discipline problem. It is what happens when a high-precision system, the human brain, is placed inside an environment designed to exploit it. The samurai of the Edo period did not face notification, but they faced something structurally identical, a world full of distractions, social pressures, and easy exits from the path that required the most from them. Their answer was not willpower. Willpower is a resource that depletes. Their answer was architecture, a structure built deliberately around their time, their attention, their clarity, and their movement, so that the right actions became easier than the wrong ones. That architecture is what this series has been building, and today we close it. Shuhari is a concept from Japanese martial arts and traditional craft. It describes the 3 stages of mastery, not as levels to unlock, but as a complete arc that every skill, every principle, and every system passes through when it is genuinely absorbed. Follow. Learn the rule completely. Execute it without questioning. Build it into your body and your daily structure until following it requires no decision. Heartbreak, after you have mastered the rule, begin to question it. Test its edges. Understand where it serves you and where it limits you. Adapt it to your specific terrain. Transcend. The rule has been absorbed so completely that you no longer need it in its original form. The principle has become instinct. You act correctly without thinking about acting correctly. Most people spend their entire lives in a broken version of Shu, trying to follow rules they never fully absorb, questioning principles they never fully understood, and transcending nothing because they never built the foundation. The tea ceremony master does not think about the precise angle of the bowl when he serves. He learned it. He repeated it until it lived in his hands. And then, one day, it stopped being a technique and became the way he moves. The experienced investor does not run through a checklist every time an opportunity appears. He spent years building and testing the framework. Now it runs quietly in the background of every decision he makes. The parent who consistently shows up for his children does not remind himself every morning to be present. Presence has become who he is, not what he does. That is not the absence of discipline, but discipline that has become identity. Let's walk through everything the Siege has built and applied Shuhari to each principle. Because understanding Toride, Kanchi, and Ma is different from living them. And living them is the only thing that actually changes anything. Toride, the internal fortress. The four walls: time, attention, finances, and mental clarity. In Shu, Toride is a set of rules you follow without fully understanding why. You protect your mornings because that is what you decided to do. You do not check your phone at dinner because you made that commitment. You pay the debt before you spend on anything else. You protect 1 hour of silence because you know clarity matters, even when you cannot measure it. This phase is uncomfortable. You are acting against habits that have years of momentum behind them. You will fail some days. The system will collapse and you will rebuild it. That is Shu functioning correctly. Not perfection, but repetition until the structure holds on its own. In Ha, you begin to understand what each wall actually protects. Your morning is not just a time block. It is the window in which your mind operates without anyone else's agenda inside it. Your financial boundary is not just a number. It is the physical expression of the decision that your future matters more than today's comfort. At this stage, you stop following the rule mechanically and start adjusting it intelligently. You realize your wall against distraction needs to be stronger in the morning and can relax in the evening. You realize your financial boundary is too rigid in one area and too loose in another. In Rai, you no longer think about protecting your time. You simply do not give it away. Someone asks for a meeting that has no clear purpose. Your answer is immediate and without guilt. Someone tries to pull you into a financial decision that contradicts your direction. Your system handles it before your emotions get involved. The walls are no longer rules. They are the shape of how you live. The practical markers of Shu and Toride. You are following the structure, but it still feels like effort. Missing a day feels like failure rather than data. The structure is working, but you are refining it. You understand why each element exists. You are making deliberate adjustments rather than corrections. The structure has become invisible. You are not maintaining a system. You are living a certain way. The difference between the two is everything. Kanchi through Shuhari, Kanchi and Metsuk. Strategic awareness and the strategist's gaze. The ability to read what is happening before it becomes obvious, and to do so without locking onto any single point. In Shu, Metsik is a practice. You consciously choose not to lock onto one detail in a conversation. You deliberately pause before forming a judgment in a meeting. You practice the open gaze for 2 minutes at a coffee shop. Every time you have to remind yourself to do it. This feels slow. It is slow. You are building a new neural pathway against the grain of a brain that has been trained to react, to judge, and to lock on to the most stimulating thing in the room. In Ha, you begin to catch yourself before the lock-on happens. You notice the moment your attention narrows in a difficult conversation, in a financial decision, in a conflict, and you have enough awareness to widen the lens before committing to a conclusion. At this stage, you also begin to apply Kanchi outside of dedicated practice. You read a situation at work and sense something that is not in the words. You listen to someone and hear the gap between what they are saying and what they actually mean. You look at your finances and see the pattern, not just the number. In Rai, perception runs without effort. You walk into a room and you know within seconds who is under pressure, where the tension is, what is not being said. You do not run through a checklist. The awareness is simply there. The way a musician hears a wrong note without thinking about music theory. This is what Masashi meant when he wrote, "When you attain the way of strategy, there will not be one thing you cannot see." The practical markers. Shu. You practice the open gaze as a deliberate exercise. You still form quick judgments and have to correct them consciously. Ha, you'll catch yourself narrowing before it happens. Your perceptions are getting more accurate. You are starting to trust what you sense, not just what you can prove. Re. Perception is no longer something you do. It is how you are. People around you notice that you read situations differently, that you respond to what is actually happening, not to what you expected to find. Ma through Shuhari. Ma, the strategic pause. The move you do not make. In Shu, Ma is a rule you apply mechanically. Before responding to a difficult message, wait. Before making a significant financial decision, wait 24 hours. Before reacting to a provocation at work, pause. In this phase, the pause feels artificial. You are holding yourself back against a strong current of reaction. Sometimes you comply with the rule and it helps. Sometimes you comply and it makes no difference. You do not yet have enough data to know when Ma serves you and when it is unnecessary friction. In Ha, you begin to distinguish. Some situations require immediate response. Waiting is indistinguishable from avoidance, and the terrain shifts while you hold. Others genuinely benefit from the pause. The clarity that arrives after 24 hours is qualitatively different from the clarity you had at the moment of reaction. You stop applying Ma as a blanket rule and start applying it as a judgment. You develop a feel for which kind of situation you are in. The pause becomes a tool you reach for when the terrain calls for it, not a step you follow because the framework says to. In RE, timing becomes instinct. You do not decide to pause, you simply know when to move and when to hold. The person who used to send the reactive message now sets the phone down without a second thought. Not because he remembered a rule, because the urgency no longer lands the same way. This is what Nobunaga understood at Okazama. He was not practicing patience. He had absorbed timing so completely that when the storm arrived, the right moment was self-evident. The 4,000 moved before the 25,000 understood what was happening. Now let's make this concrete, because philosophy without application is just entertainment. Here are 4 areas where Shuhari produces measurable, specific changes, not eventually. Starting from wherever you are right now. Finances. In Shu, you follow one financial rule without exception, not because you understand the full picture, but because the full picture is too complex to act on right now. Pay the debt before anything else. Save the percentage before you see it. Do not make financial decisions under emotional pressure. The rule is simple because it has to be. Complexity at the Shu stage is an excuse for inaction. In Ha, you understand why the rule works. Paying debt first is not just math, it is a statement about which version of yourself you are building. Saving before you see it is not just a saving strategy. It is the architectural removal of a decision point that your brain loses every time it faces it. At this stage, you begin to optimize. The percentage changes. The target shifts. The instrument evolves. But the underlying principle that your financial future requires daily decisions that your present self resists, that principle is now yours, not a rule you are following. In Re, financial discipline is not a practice. It is how you relate to money. The decision to spend unnecessarily does not feel tempting. It feels like going backwards, not because you suppress the impulse, because the impulse lost its grip. Procrastination. Procrastination is not a character flaw. It is a mismatch between the reward structure of your environment and the reward structure of the work that matters. Your environment offers immediate feedback, a like, a reply, a laugh, a rush of new information. The work that matters offers delayed, uncertain, and often invisible feedback. Your brain is not broken for preferring the first. It is working exactly as designed. Shu does not fix this by motivation. It fixes it by structure. You remove the fast reward from the environment during the hours when the real work needs to happen. Not forever, for the window. The phone is in another room. The browser is closed. The only available action is the one you committed to. This feels like deprivation at first. It is deprivation. That is what Shu is, a temporary constraint that builds a new baseline. In Ha, you begin to understand your own procrastination patterns. You notice that you avoid certain tasks specifically, not tasks in general. The avoided tasks almost always share a common feature: uncertainty about whether the output will be good enough. This is the fear of judgment wearing the mask of delay, and once you see it clearly, you can address it directly, not by eliminating the fear, but by building enough evidence through repeated output that the fear loses its authority. In Re, you start before you feel ready, not because you are fearless. Because you learned that readiness is a feeling that arrives after you start, not before. The gap between intention and action has closed, not to zero, but to seconds instead of weeks. In Shu, structure is external. You write it down. You set alarms. You use accountability. You tell someone else so that the social pressure helps carry what your will cannot yet hold alone. This is not weakness. This is how Shu works. The samurai did not meditate because he felt like meditating. He meditated because the structure of his day required it. Feeling came later. In Ha, structure becomes internal. You understand why each element of your day exists. You adjust it based on what you learn about yourself. When your focus peaks, when it collapses, what depletes you and what restores you. You stop copying someone else's structure and start building your own. In RA, you no longer maintain a routine. You live in a rhythm. The distinction is this: a routine is something you do. A rhythm is something you are. A broken routine creates guilt. A disrupted rhythm self-corrects because the body and mind know what they need and return to it. Relationships and presence. The Toride principle of Bunky, the clear line between what is yours to carry and what belongs to others, runs directly through every relationship you have. In Shu, you practice presence as a deliberate act. The phone is face down at dinner. You finish what the other person is saying before forming your response. You are physically in the room and you are working to be mentally there as well. In Ha, you begin to understand the difference between being present and performing presence. You stop checking the box and start actually listening. You notice when a conversation has shifted and the person in front of you needs something different from what you are offering. In Re, presence is not something you practice. It is how you show up. The people who matter to you feel the difference, not because you told them you were working on it, but because something in how you engage with them has changed at a level that does not require words. This is what the Christian tradition has always pointed toward. Not the performance of love, but love that has been so completely absorbed into character that it requires no effort to express. Paul did not decide to be faithful in each new city he entered. Faithfulness had become who he was. The mission moved through him, not from him. That is reapplied to how we serve the people in our lives. Let's step back and see the full architecture. Toride without Kanchi is a fortress that cannot see what is building outside its walls. You protect what you have, but you cannot read the terrain. You will be surprised by what you did not notice coming. Kanchi without Toride is perception without ground to stand on. You see what is happening, but your domain is in collapse. You have clarity about the field, but no stability from which to act on that clarity. Toride and Kanchi without Ma are a fortress and a gaze with no timing. You are protected, you are aware, but you move at the wrong moments, acting when you should hold, holding when you should act. Ma without Toride and Kanchi is empty waiting. There's nothing to protect and nothing to read. The pause produces nothing because there is no architecture beneath it and no awareness informing it. The three work as a system, not sequentially, simultaneously. Toride gives you the stability to observe. Kanchi gives you the information to decide. Ma gives you the discipline to move only when the terrain demands it. When all three are functioning, something shifts. You stop reacting to your life and start designing it. The siege that was closing in on you becomes a siege you are running. One final thing before we close. Shuhari is not a finish line. Re is not a place you arrive and stay. It is a place you arrive and from which you begin again at a higher level. The tea ceremony master who has transcended technique does not stop learning. He begins learning the next layer of what the ceremony holds. The Re of one level becomes the Shua of the next. This is where Kaizen enters. Continuous improvement, not the frantic self-optimization of someone who believes they're not enough. The quiet, deliberate refinement of someone who understands that the work of becoming is never finished and has made peace with that. Kaizen is what Shuhari looks like across a lifetime. You will not complete the siege and be done. You will complete the siege and begin again, at a different level, with different tools, in a different season of your life. The principles do not change. What changes is the depth at which you can receive them. Build on stone. Serve your family with strategy. Reclaim what is yours. That is your duty. This was episode 5 of The Siege. The final episode. 5 principles, 1 architecture. Toride, Kanchi, Ma, and now Shuhari, the map of how mastery actually works. The next series enters new terrain, Kaizen, the discipline of continuous refinement. How to build systems that improve themselves. How to make the work of becoming sustainable across years, not just weeks. Subscribe to Edo Scripts and write in the comments which of the three principles, Toride, Kanchi, or Ma, are you still in shoe with? Be honest, not aspirational. I am Kenji. The way continues. Sayonara.